Welcome to CVBY Infidelity Story, where we bring you fascinating emotional stories, sometimes tear-jerking, sometimes making you reflect on the dark corners of life. Today, let's join the story of Emma, a beautiful girl from a wealthy family whose marriage seemed like a dream but turned into a nightmare with no way out. This is a true story that happened in 1995, but to protect the identities of the characters and respect their privacy, we will use pseudonyms. We will also not mention the specific state or city where this took place. Our purpose is to share lessons, raise awareness, and motivate positive change. Emma's love and the beginning of a tragic fate. Emma, a noble lady from a well-off family in San Francisco, California, grew up surrounded by love and care. She was beautiful, intelligent, and always full of life. However, Emma's heart belonged to Jake, a poor orphan with an attractive appearance and a confident smile. From the first meeting, Emma was captivated by Jake, as if drawn to a bright light. She simply couldn't take her eyes off him. A passionate love blossomed between them despite their stark differences in background. To Emma, the love she shared with Jake was the most genuine, the most intense, so much so that she was willing to give up everything. However, Emma's father, Richard, strongly opposed the relationship. An experienced man who always prioritized his daughter's happiness, he believed Jake was unworthy of Emma. But Emma thought her father was wrong. Despite endless arguments, tears from her mother, and the advice of relatives, Emma was determined to follow her heart. She left her family behind and married Jake, believing that love was everything. But what she didn't expect was that, most of the time, parents are right. The nightmare begins. The first month of marriage brought Emma a sense of complete happiness. Jake appeared to be a loving, devoted husband, making Emma believe she had made the right choice. However, that sweet facade quickly faded. Jake soon revealed his true self, hot-tempered, rude, and violent. Small disagreements escalated into unreasonable outbursts. Worse, whenever Jake drank, he lost control completely. Emma, terrified, could only curl up and endure. She dared not tell anyone, especially not her parents. The guilt of choosing the wrong person silenced her. She hid the bruises on her body, along with the wounds in her heart. But Jake didn't stop there. He sank deeper into alcohol addiction and gambling, burning through the family's money. Emma was frustrated but felt helpless. She told herself she had to endure, because this was the life she had chosen. Then she discovered she was pregnant. She believed this child would be the turning point, the reason for Jake to change and become a good husband and father. But she was wrong. A mother's silent suffering. Jake did not change. Instead, the pressure of impending fatherhood made him even more violent. The abuse was no longer just emotional, it became brutal physical attacks. Pregnant and trapped in this nightmare, Emma endured everything. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony in her heart. One night, Jake beat her until she lost consciousness. When she woke up, she could only hold her belly and sob, praying her baby was unharmed. Many times Emma thought about escaping, but she hesitated. Jake threatened that if she left, he would find her and harm both her and the baby. And how could she go home after all this? Her father had warned her. She had chosen this path. She had no courage left to face them. Years passed, but the nightmare didn't end. Emma gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, Sophie. But that changed nothing. Jake continued his violence. He even blamed Emma for ruining his life. The nightmares didn't stop. They only got longer. Every night, Emma sat in the dark, holding her baby, tears falling onto her daughter's tiny head. She wondered, where did I go wrong? Is there a way out for me and my child? But the answer was silence. Time passed in a blur. Escape of the daughters. When Sophie turned 18, she left home. Life in a violent household had drained her spirit, leaving her frail and lifeless. Unable to endure it any longer, she ran away to New York City, seeking independence. Since then, she rarely returned home. She came only for holidays, staying just a few days before leaving again in a hurry. Outsiders thought she had abandoned her family, but no one knew the truth. 2 years later, Emma's second daughter, Mia, turned 18. She too ran away, unable to bear the fear and trauma. She joined Sophie, hoping for a better life far away from the house of horrors. Now only Emma, Jake, and their youngest daughter, Olivia, 14 years old, remained in that dreadful home. A terrifying discovery. With both older daughters gone, the atmosphere in the house grew heavier. One day, Jake suddenly announced that he wanted to become a monk, to atone for his sins. Emma, desperate for hope, wanted to believe that this was his chance to change. But soon she realized, monsters don't change overnight. Jake's cruelty returned. His drinking, his screaming, his violence, everything came back. One afternoon, Emma finished work earlier than usual and returned home. As she entered the house, she saw Olivia walking out of the bedroom. Her hair was messy. Her face was pale. Her eyes were hollow. A wave of unease rose in Emma's heart. Then she glanced inside the bedroom. Jake was lying on the bed, his pants unzipped. The room was a mess. Emma's heart clenched. She knew what had happened, but she didn't have the courage to face it. The final truth. That night Emma said nothing. Not until Jake left to go drinking did she turn to Olivia. "Sweetheart, is something wrong?" she asked softly, forcing calm into her voice. Olivia's eyes darted away. "It's nothing, Mom. I'm just tired," she whispered. Emma didn't dare to push further. But a few days later, Olivia came to her, shaking, tears brimming in her eyes. Then she broke down. She sobbed, confessing everything. Jake had violated her. He had threatened that if she told anyone, he would hurt both her and Emma. Emma felt like she was struck by lightning. Her own daughter, Jake's own flesh and blood, suffering this unspeakable cruelty. Emma pulled Olivia into her arms, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in years she felt something stronger than fear. She felt rage. And at that moment she knew. This nightmare had to end. Lily trembled, tears filling her eyes. After a moment of hesitation, Arya broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom!" she choked, her voice barely above a whisper. "That afternoon when you came home early, Matthew had just..." She couldn't finish. But Lily understood. Her heart stopped. Her own daughter. Matthew's own flesh and blood. A wave of nausea hit Lily as Arya continued, her voice shaking with fear. "He told me that if I ever spoke about it, he would hurt both of us." Lily felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her whole world collapsed in an instant. She pulled Arya into a tight embrace, tears streaming down her face. Guilt and pain consumed her. How had she let this happen? But fear quickly overtook her rage. She thought about Arya's future. What if Matthew did something even worse? Lily hesitated. She was terrified. She wanted to protect Arya, but she didn't know how. In a trembling voice, she whispered, "Just bear with it for a little longer. I will talk to him. I'll make him stop." That night, after Arya had fallen asleep, Lily sat alone in the dark, her mind racing. Was she doing the right thing? All day, Arya's tearful confession had echoed in her head. Finally, after hours of torment, she made a decision. She had to confront Matthew. Lily approached Matthew cautiously. He was slumped in his usual worn-out chair, clutching a half-empty bottle of whiskey. His eyes were cold, emotionless. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. "Matthew, I know everything." He didn't react. "Arya told me," she continued. You hurt her. She's your daughter. Please, ***, I beg you. ***, if it's true, stop this now." The room fell silent. Then Matthew snapped. His face turned red with rage. His eyes burned with fury. "What the hell are you talking about?" he bellowed. The glass bottle smashed against the floor, shards flying everywhere. Without warning, he stormed toward the door. But instead of leaving, he slammed it shut, turning back to face her. "You dare accuse me?" His voice was ice-cold, deadly. "I'll kill everyone, if I hear another word about this." Lily stumbled backward, eyes wide with terror. Before she could react, he attacked. The blows came hard and fast. She fell to the floor, pain exploding through her body. But no physical pain could compare to the agony in her heart. That night, Matthew tortured her mercilessly. Through the pain, through the beatings, she did not scream. She couldn't. If she fought back, he would kill them all. The next morning, Lily woke up battered and bruised. She bit her lip to hold back a moan of pain. She couldn't wake Arya. She couldn't let her daughter see her like this. Matthew was still asleep, reeking of alcohol. He felt no guilt, no remorse. To him, violence was just another way to assert power. Lily wanted to scream. She wanted to run away. But fear and helplessness had become chains binding her to this nightmare. Day after day she lived in silence. In suffering, the beatings grew worse. Each time she felt smaller, weaker. Every night she curled up in bed, hugging herself, crying silently, so as not to wake the children. She wanted to protect them, but she couldn't even save herself. Her weakness, built up over years of abuse, became her biggest obstacle. Every morning she put on a mask, hiding her wounds, both the ones on her skin and the deeper ones in her heart. One morning as Lily was walking home from work, a motorbike came out of nowhere. The impact was brutal. She hit the ground. Then everything went black. When she woke up in the hospital, pain throbbed through her entire body. Her first instinct was to reach for her phone. For years she had suffered in silence. For years she had told herself there was no way out. But now, she had almost died. She couldn't stay silent any longer. With trembling fingers, she dialed a number she had avoided for so long. Ella and Sally, her daughters. Would they answer? Would they even care? The moment they heard their mother had been in a serious accident, they did not hesitate. They packed their bags and came home. When Lily was discharged, Ella and Sally took her back to the house. The moment they stepped inside, they saw him. Matthew sat in his chair, clutching his stomach, his face twisted in anger. He did not ask if Lily was okay. Instead, his first words were, "You two are ungrateful. Your mother had an accident, and you're only showing up now? What a disgrace." Ella snapped. After years of suffering, the rage she had buried deep inside finally exploded. She walked up to him, eyes burning with fury. "Dad, my life is ruined because of you." Her voice trembled with emotion. "Don't you dare act like you care now." Matthew's face twisted in fury. He lunged at her. But Sally pulled him back just in time. That's when Matthew did something none of them expected. He grabbed a 5-liter gasoline can. And with a chilling smile, he whispered, "Then let's end everything." Before anyone could react, he began pouring gasoline all over the house. The stench filled the air. Lily and her daughters froze in terror. Matthew stood in the middle of the room, a lighter in his hand. His eyes were wild. "None of you ever respected me," he hissed. "So now, I'll burn everything to the ground." Lily fell to her knees, pleading, "Please, Matthew, don't do this. Hurt me if you want, but not them." Screams echoed through the house. Neighbors, hearing the commotion, rushed over. The flames began to rise. In the chaos, Lily and her daughters managed to escape. The 4 of them stood outside, trembling, watching their home burn. Tears streamed down their faces. But for the first time in years, Lily felt something else. Something stronger than fear. Determination. She turned to her daughters, voice shaking. "We're going to the police." With the testimony of all 3 daughters, the police launched an investigation. That night they arrested Matthew. Even in handcuffs he screamed, "I didn't do anything. They're lying. This is a conspiracy." But he knew. It was over. The truth was out. And for the first time in decades, Lily and her daughters were free. Matthew was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. A fitting punishment for a man who had inflicted unimaginable suffering upon his own family. He had shown no remorse, no awareness of the damage he had caused. His reckless cruelty turned him into a symbol of unforgivable depravity. On the day of his sentencing, Lily and her daughters did not attend the court. Instead, they sat together in a small room, held hands, and made a promise to start over. The road ahead would not be easy, and Lily knew it. But this time she would be strong. She had failed to protect them before, but now she would become their pillar of support. The darkness had passed, and for the first time in decades, Lily and her daughters could finally build a new life. A life without fear. A life filled with love and hope. A story that must never be forgotten. Lily's story is not just a tragedy. It is a warning. A warning about the devastating consequences of domestic violence, silence in the face of injustice, and the indifference of those around us. From this story there are powerful lessons we all must remember, so that no one else has to endure the same pain. 1. Silence is never the answer. Lily and her daughters suffered in silence for years, afraid to speak up because of fear and intimidation. But staying silent only gave Matthew more power. Hiding or tolerating abuse does not make it go away. Speaking up is not just a right, it is a responsibility. A responsibility to protect yourself, to protect others, to stop the cycle of violence. 2. Domestic violence is not a private matter. So many people saw the signs, the bruises, the fear in Lily's eyes, the way her daughters withdrew from the world. But no one acted, because they thought, it's not my business. This is a deadly mistake. If neighbors, friends, or relatives had paid attention earlier, perhaps this tragedy would not have lasted so long. A single word of concern, a phone call to the police, a small act of intervention can save lives. 3. Everyone deserves a life free from fear. For years, Lily and her daughters believed they had no way out. They thought they didn't deserve happiness. This is why education about self-worth and human rights is so important, especially for women and children. No one has the right to hurt you, and silence only prolongs the pain. If you or someone you know is suffering from domestic violence, speak up. Seek help from family, friends, or support organizations, because there is always a way out. Change starts with you. We must work together to build a world where everyone feels safe and protected. Speak up for yourself. Speak up for those who are too afraid to, because change starts with action. And action starts today. That brings us to the end of today's story. A story filled with pain, but also powerful lessons. If you found this story meaningful, please like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next stories. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. See you in the next video with more compelling stories. Thank you for watching. Take care and stay safe.